Brandon Grace became the first South African in a decade to win the Nedbank Golf Challenge this weekend. It was about the only bit of good news for South Africa on the sports front. Bafana failing to qualify for the World Cup in Russia after their defeat to Senegal, and then the Springboks notching up another unwanted record, this time against Ireland. That's going to be the focus of our discussion this morning with Sport24 editor Garen Lamley and chief writer Rob Howing. Gents, good morning. It's good to have you back in our studio.
Hi, Nick. Good morning, Nick.
I hope you don't mind sharing the microphone this morning. Garen, we'll start with you. Even Coach Alistair Coetzee said that there were no positives to take from this game. Your thoughts?
Well, he's quite correct in that, because certainly there weren't any positives at all. You know, desperately disappointing way to get your end-of-year tour off. You know, last year we didn't win a single game. This year we're 0-1, heading into the French match next weekend, which certainly won't be a walkover either. But just desperately sad. We don't quite, you know, where the Springboks are heading, their direction, their game plan. It's just not obvious, I think, to the rugby fan. They're seemingly headless chickens running around, kicking the ball away when clearly the pass is the option to take, and just seemingly not looking on attack in particular, for me, just not looking dangerous at all. I can't remember a single occasion where we actually threatened the Irish line. And when you consider that Ireland haven't actually played a test since the Six Nations in March, you know, they didn't have their mid-year tour because they were part of the British and Irish Lions tour to New Zealand, where South Africa played 9 tests this year. But they were the team that looked like they hadn't played together ever, and the Irish looked like they hadn't missed a beat at all. So, you know, credit, I guess, has to go to their coach as well, who Joe Schmidt, who is one of the top coaches in the world, it must be said. He completely outthought Alistair Coetzee, which is obviously not the first time. I think Coetzee even made mention of the fact that he was, you know, outthought by his opponent, or his direct opponent in charge of Ireland. So, you know, again, so sad to see the way South African rugby has sort of fallen off the map. We're not even considered like a top tier anymore. You know, sort of part of the also-rans, if you like. And it's difficult to see how we sort of turn this around. You know, we're coming off the last match against New Zealand at Newlands, where we lost by a single point. You know, the more we look back on that, the more I think it flattered us a little bit. The tournament was over. New Zealand already had won. They had nothing to play for. They'd been flown twice around the world. We scored a late consolation try to make it a one-point game. New Zealand butchered a lot of tries early in the first half, which could have blown out the score as well. But we were harping on that result, and now we're looking at how we managed to lose 38-3 to an Irish team, which I think is sort of a fairer reflection of actually where we stand in world rugby. So, you know, it's difficult to find any positives at all from my point of view. We seeming the longer the game went on, the worse we actually looked. You know, is it fatigue? Is it fitness? The Ireland team just got stronger and stronger as the second half wore on. And, you know, I think when the final whistle blew, a lot of South Africans were quite happy to hear that noise. So, yeah, a long road ahead for the Springbok team. I don't think they can turn it around in 7 days, to be quite honest. Got a couple of key injury concerns with Kuni Oosthuizen and Peter Steph du Toit, who's one of the better players on the day, suffering some concussion issues. You know, who do we call in? I mean, there's nobody that stands out as an obvious replacement for either of those two players. So, you know, a lot of head scratching this week, a lot of off-field issues. You know, what is Brendan Venter really adding? What does Franco Smith add to the backline? Rassie Erasmus coming in. Does Alistair Coetzee really want to report to him? You know, it's not sort of what he signed up for when he took the job. So, you know, a lot of chefs in the kitchen, but, you know, I don't know how that's really going to pan out in South Africa's best favour.
Rob, some felt that your player ratings were a bit kind, and you did say that obviously there are certain basics which players have to do and which they did do. But, I mean, we could obviously criticise the individual performances, but just looking at the sort of, I guess, blueprint of the team, and you know, all this sort of positive sort of change that we sort of saw at the beginning of the season, and then obviously there's been a couple of results along the way, the thrashing in Albany, and now this, which take us back to that sort of the ghosts of 2016.
Absolutely. I mean, the real telltale sign is less about the games that we've looked decent at, and more about the games where we've crashed to earth with a violent bump, and that's happened far too often. That tells you that it's a team in a crisis. So you have to unfortunately treat, for instance, the clean sweep over France in the June series, which looked so encouraging. you have to actually say, well, you know, the French team arrived here also back end of their season, and looking like a bit of a rebel at the time. We know that French rugby isn't great shakes, hasn't been for several years. So I'm afraid the main template you have to use to judge Alistair Coetzee is the sort of violence of these defeats that we keep getting. You know, when the All Blacks put 57 points on us, and then Ireland put 38-3. Those actually are I'm afraid, become the telltale results. Those are the ones that say that the Springboks have a crisis of confidence, of structure, of personnel. And personnel, frankly, for me, is Alistair Coetzee has done himself no favours. He's stuck far too rigidly with certain players who have been mediocre at very, very best for several weeks. I mean, we're talking players now who have had, some of them have had 9, 10 caps, which is way too generous for guys who've just never actually produced cutting-edge performances. I'm thinking especially of the back three. We have a major problem at fullback and the two wings. Ireland exploited that shortcoming mercilessly with their clever tactical kicking, the aggression of their contesting high balls and so on, where they won virtually every time. The entire Springbok backline is problematic at the moment. I wrote a piece over the weekend suggesting that it must be the first time in a very long time that an entire Springbok backline, you cannot say that one of those 7 players actually is nailed down. It's shaky right through the ranks there. So that's a frightener in itself, because you don't have a Brian Habana or a Jean de Villiers as a sort of a calming influence. Who are the generals in that back line? There aren't any. There are just kind of a few sort of grubby soldiers in the trenches in many respects, unfortunately.